On this Monday night, the messages from Moscow. What President Putin said and didn't say at Victory Day celebrations, plus how Ukrainians are strengthening their resolve. Upheaval and unrest in Sri Lanka.
It's a corrupted government.
The economic crisis and sudden resignation of its prime minister. Diversity in politics.
Has there been a time where you felt like you were treated differently because of your ethnicity?
Highlighting the importance of representation during Asian Heritage Month. And Top Dog, the terrier who got a medal for bravery in Ukraine.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. This was Victory Day in both Russia and Ukraine, a national holiday to commemorate the defeat of Nazi Germany in World War II. And Russia's Vladimir Putin and Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelenskyy had starkly different messages to their people and the world. Putin appeared at the usual huge parade of military might in Moscow's Red Square, but in a speech he could not claim victory in the war he started on Ukraine. Instead, he again attempted to twist history, falsely claiming he's fighting Ukrainian Nazis, that Ukraine is going to acquire nuclear weapons, and that his unprovoked attack on Ukraine was necessary for the security of Russia. From the center of Kyiv, Ukraine's president set the record straight in this video message.
У день перемоги над нацизмом ми боремось за нову перемогу.
Millions of Ukrainians fought Nazism, he said, and Nazis were expelled from all of Ukraine. We are fighting for a new victory now, he said, and have no doubt we will win. No victory in Ukraine right now doesn't mean no bloodshed. Fierce battles are underway in the Donbass in the south and east of Ukraine, where Russia is pounding areas with artillery. Our Europe Bureau Chief, Goomansingh, is in Kyiv tonight. Crystal?
Donna, people here in Kyiv were prepared for the worst. Many thought the Kremlin would use May 9th, Victory Day in Russia, to attack the capital and send people here back into a state of stress and fear. Instead, it's been calm. Ukrainian resolve and pride is not just something people in Kyiv talk about. They're draping themselves in it. These men, Igor and Dmitrio, planned their outfits. They knew the day could bring new dangers.
Today is such a day when we should expect provocation from the Russian Federation. So we must be very careful today as never before.
Looking around, the sunshine, the tulips in full bloom, it's hard not to relax and just enjoy a sliver of normal life. Like most days since the full invasion, rocket warning sirens did sound, but the reaction to them has changed.
We do not always pay attention, but when we hear something is flying or whistling somewhere, we look back and see what, where, how, and where we can hide.
Just over a week ago, multiple buildings in a residential neighborhood were hit and one woman killed, a journalist. The nighttime strike on April 28th, a reminder to everyone of the unpredictability of Russia and that nowhere is totally safe. In Zaporizhzhia, in the southeast of Ukraine, fears of an attack led to a full 3-day curfew ending Tuesday. There were victory celebrations marking May 9th in some Ukrainian territories currently occupied by Russia, including Mariupol. Given the restrictions on media and dangers on the ground, it's unclear if people at this gathering in the city were there by choice or force. Ukrainian officials say people were told the march was to a field kitchen where food was being provided.
There is no occupier that can take root in our free land. There is no invader who can rule over our free people. Sooner or later, we will win.
Victory for Ukraine. Volodymyr Zelenskyy has repeated that message now for 75 days. The message of victory and hope is one people here believe and take to heart, even if sleep comes easier some nights. Donna?
Crystal Goomansingh in Kyiv, thanks. 10 weeks into the war, Russia's army has failed to take any major cities in Ukraine and has suffered heavy losses. Jeff Semple reports on the parade and the pomp in Moscow today and what clues it might offer about Vladimir Putin's next move.
It's the Kremlin's annual show of strength. 11,000 Russian troops and more than 100 military vehicles paraded through Moscow's Red Square, marking Victory Day, the anniversary of the Soviet defeat of Nazi Germany. But this year, the world was watching to hear what the Russian president would say about his war in Ukraine.
Вы сражаетесь за родину.
You are fighting for the motherland, Vladimir Putin said, so that no one forgets the lessons of World War II. There is no place in the world for executioners and Nazis. Defending his invasion, Putin claimed without evidence that Ukraine was seeking nuclear weapons and that NATO was planning to attack Russian-speaking communities in the east. But what's perhaps most remarkable is what Putin didn't say.
He didn't declare mass mobilization. He didn't threaten to use nuclear weapons. He didn't declare victory.
Putin's former speechwriter says the president appeared a weakened figure.
I see in the speech that they are ready to retreat. It wouldn't be a big exaggeration to say that this speech is an invitation to a negotiating table. Putin, obviously, he refused to escalate the situation. This is an invitation.
Putin has long used Victory Day to reinforce the idea that Russia is a great superpower, its military unmatched. But that image now stands in sharp contrast to its error-riddled invasion of Ukraine.
We have seen the Russian military for what it is, and it is probably at best a second-tier military.
Even this Russian army veteran, one of the leaders of Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014, has been posting videos like this, claiming it will be impossible for Russia to win in Ukraine under what he calls its incompetent leadership. But these days, that level of criticism is rare. Over the past couple of months, thousands of Russians who've dared to condemn the war have been arrested.
They are not that much scared of police.
The head of Russia's main independent polling firm says the vast majority of Russians claim to support their president and his so-called special military operation.
Do you think Russians genuinely support this operation, or are they just afraid to say that they don't?
If it is fear, then this is a fear of being not in line with the rest of the nation. The perception of this special operation is this is a combat with United States or NATO.
Now, back in March, those opinion polls showed support for the war in Ukraine at over 80%. But that has dropped several points since then, and those Russian pollsters predict that the longer the war drags on, the more unpopular it and Putin will become, Donna.
And Jeff, you were at Victory Day celebrations in Red Square a few years ago. What was your impression of the differences between then and now?
Yeah, well, back in 2017, there were other foreign leaders in attendance. Today, not even Vladimir Putin's closest allies showed up. And after the event back in 2017, we were also able to interview ordinary Russians, some of whom were openly critical of their president. But that openness appears to have vanished almost overnight. It is much more difficult to get people in Russia to speak with us now. Some of them say that's because we're an enemy network from an enemy country. But others say it's simply because it's not worth the risk of 15 years in prison. Donna?
Well, even calling it a war is a crime now. Jeff Semple in Toronto, thanks. Canada's Prime Minister is on his way home from Kyiv today after meeting with Ukraine's president. Abigail Bimman is tracking the reaction to Justin Trudeau's trip and what's being done to speed up the process of getting Ukrainian refugees here to Canada.
Go and lift it up.
The Prime Minister reopened Ukraine's Canadian embassy Sunday.
The flag flying in Kyiv is symbolic, but it's real.
The Ukrainian-Canadian Congress was glad to see Justin Trudeau, the Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Affairs Minister in Ukraine, but not impressed it's taking Canada so long to bring Ukrainians here on chartered flights. It's been 1 month since the Prime Minister promised to do just that, along with temporary hotel stays and income support.
It's on the verge of an unacceptable delay. There's planes flying out of Warsaw, Berlin, Paris, Rome every day.
Concerns echoed by the opposition.
The government was inefficient with the Afghans, and we see the same thing with the Ukrainians.
It's a big failure from this government to those people who wants to come here and who already have their visa to come here, but they don't have the money to get to a plane. I mean, this is ridiculous.
Conservatives want that visa requirement waived and chartered flights faster.
We want a concrete plan. We want a concrete timeline from the minister.
I really understand and appreciate all those people who want things to move faster, and we want it to move faster as well.
No flight timeline from the transport minister, who continues to blame logistical challenges.
We're coordinating where everyone is and who wants to come so we can facilitate the departure points and landing points.
Somehow, the province of Newfoundland and Labrador was able to work through the challenges. The first government-chartered flight full of Ukrainians arrives in St. John's Monday evening. We asked the federal transport minister about the province's success, but he did not directly comment. Abigail Bimman, Global News, Ottawa.
The Queen has pulled out of another public engagement because of mobility problems. Buckingham Palace says the Queen continues to experience episodic mobility problems and, in consultation with her doctors, has reluctantly decided that she will not attend the state opening of Parliament tomorrow. There's no other detail on what the problems exactly are. Prince Charles will deliver the speech on her behalf, and it will be the first time Queen Elizabeth has missed this ceremony since 1963. The 96-year-old has cut back on public appearances since spraining her back last fall and testing positive for COVID-19 earlier this year. Political turmoil in Sri Lanka. Coming up, the violent protests and the Prime Minister's resignation. After weeks of resisting calls to step down, Sri Lanka's Prime Minister has now resigned and a nationwide curfew imposed. There have been violent protests. Several people have died, including an MP. People are angry about the escalating economic crisis. Basic supplies like food and gas are expensive and scarce, and the government's finances are a mess. Redmond Shannon on the rising unrest in Sri Lanka.
A day of chaos after weeks of mostly peaceful protests. Anti-government activists in Sri Lanka say the violence was triggered when they were attacked by pro-government supporters.
They beat all of us, they demolished our place.
By the end of the day, a ruling party lawmaker was dead, a cabinet minister's home had been torched, and the Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa had tendered his resignation to the president, his brother Gotabaya Rajapaksa. Both men the focus of rising anger in recent years, now boiling over amidst an economic crisis resulting in shortages of food and fuel.
There doesn't seem to be a plan in terms of addressing these basic challenges.
Human rights lawyer Bhavani Fonseca says international financing is urgently needed, but it may only be secured once the situation on the streets has stabilized.
People are not satisfied with just this resignation. They want the resignation of the president, Gotabaya Rajapaksa, as well.
Members of the Rajapaksa family have known power in Sri Lanka for decades. Mahinda was president in 2009 at the end of the civil war between the government and the militant separatist Tamil Tigers. He has denied war crime allegations from that period, and critics accuse him of doing little to heal the scars in society, including former Canadian High Commissioner Bruce Levy.
This war ended a few months before my arrival. 8 months later, I was invited to the anniversary of the ending of it, which is termed a victory parade. And for the next 3 years, that's what it was.
Levy and others hope a proposed unity government may improve more than just its economy to help Sri Lanka deal with the trauma of its past. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
Millions of Filipinos headed to the polls for their country's election, and an infamous dictator's son appears poised to win the presidency in a landslide. Initial results show Ferdinand Marcos Jr., widely known as Bong Bong, will sweep more than double the number of votes of his main rival, Leni Robredo, the outgoing vice president. It's believed much of the success of Marcos Jr. stems from a massive disinformation campaign targeting his opponent, plus efforts to rewrite his own disgraced family history. Marcos Jr. is the son of late Ferdinand Marcos. He ran a brutal kleptocracy that saw torture, political killings, and oppression of Filipinos under martial law. His regime lasted more than 20 years until an uprising ousted him in 1986. Ahead, the Canadian minister and the U.S. diplomat leading the way for Asians in politics. The U.S. is Canada's largest trading partner. The importance of that relationship can't be overstated. And when Canada's Trade Minister Mary Ng held a recent meeting with her American counterpart, Catherine Tai, there was some personal pride for the two leaders. Both are the first women of Asian descent to hold their respective positions. And they met during Asian Heritage Month. They both sat down exclusively with Global Toronto anchor Tracy Tong. Tracy?
Well, Donna, as soon as I met them, I could see that Minister Mary Ng and U.S. Ambassador Catherine Tai were not just counterparts in their roles in international trade. They bonded over their cultural identities, their challenges and triumphs in getting to where they are, and their sense of responsibility in inspiring the future generation. Minister Ng, Ambassador Tai, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me today during a really important time, Asian Heritage Month.
First of all, I'm really thrilled that Ambassador Tai is visiting here, her first time in Canada. And during Asian Heritage Month, I thought it was a wonderful way to have an opportunity to have a conversation with Asian Canadians, leaders, but with young people, and share stories about what is possible.
You have very important roles in your respective governments. You also have a very important role as role models, as the first Asian Canadian women in your position, Asian American woman in your position. Talk to me about that responsibility that comes with that.
Well, I feel a sense of responsibility, there's no question. It was a difficult decision for me to run because I never saw myself out there. I mean, I've done a lot of effective work and I've largely worked behind the scenes, but I couldn't see her to be her. I hope that by those who now are seeing her, me, in a role like this, that they do see that it's possible.
But has there been a time where you felt like you were treated differently because of your ethnicity?
I think it's probably every single day, right? And I think that's part of the reason why the representation is so important, because the fact of the matter is, even though we're not supposed to judge by a book by its cover, maybe it's a bit of a human instinct to do so. And I think that as Asian Americans, our community struggles every day with asserting our belonging.
Given strained relations between China and the West, in your roles, do you ever feel like your ability to do your job is unfairly questioned, maybe because of your ethnicity?
I might even call the relations and the dynamics fraught. Let me put it this way. The United States and China are the world's two largest economies. How we relate to each other impacts not just ourselves and our workers and businesses, but the entire world, including Canada's. So that's a great sense of responsibility.
The fact that you are each other's counterparts, but also in this fight together to spread a shared message, I can tell that the two of you aren't just colleagues, you're friends.
I was going to say that Mary's pretty nice for a Canadian, but everybody thinks that everyone thinks that Canadians are nice.
And the work that we will continue to do is that anything is possible.
Thank you so much for your time today. Happy Asian Heritage Month.
And thank you, Tracy, for what you are doing as well, and your representation. So happy Asian Heritage Month to you as well.
And tonight, Minister Ng is participating in the Asian Heritage Month celebration on Parliament Hill. The theme is continuing a legacy of greatness, serving as a reminder for Canadians to come together and combat anti-Asian racism. Donna?
All right, Tracy Tong in Toronto, thanks. Puppy Power next, the dog honored by Ukraine's president and sharing the spotlight with Canada's Prime Minister. We've been doing stories about Ukraine every day for 10 weeks now, and we will keep telling the human stories of the war until it's over. But we have another angle tonight. It's about a little dog who has become a national hero, a 2-year-old Jack Russell Terrier who is a small but mighty force and who even put Canada's Prime Minister on the spot. Mike Drolet reports.
It was an awkward moment. Should Prime Minister Justin Trudeau extend his hand or stay in his spot? Patron, who owns the most famous nose in Ukraine, let Trudeau know his choice stunk, much to the delight of one of Canada's foremost dog trainers.
Maybe he thought he was loaded.
Trudeau had traveled to Kyiv to offer Canada's support in the war against Russia. He left having been upstaged by a Jack Russell Terrier.
Funding for demining operations. Even if the dog barked at me, we're helping fund that.
But Patron, whose name means cartridge in Ukrainian, is no ordinary dog. He works in the northern city of Chernihiv, which was pummeled by Russian forces for over a month. And while the Russians may have left, the city is no less dangerous. Scattered amongst all the rubble, there remains a significant amount of unexploded ordnance. That's Patron's specialty. Since the start of the war, he's been credited with detecting more than 200 explosives.
The dog working in theater has got a lot of explosive odor all over the place. And it takes a lot of work to clear the dog's head to look for a source of an odor rather than just a fringe odor.
Sid Murray, who's been training dogs for over 25 years and helped demine Bosnia and Kosovo, says it's hard enough to do in a controlled setting. Finding explosives in an active war zone is remarkable. Given what Patron's done, it's no surprise he's gained a fan base who have taken to knit plushies of the 2-year-old. Others have posted paintings and drawings on social media of our heroic-looking hound with his trademark vest, doing what he does best. And that's where he'll return as a newly minted hero of Ukraine. But he didn't need the medal to know he was appreciated. Just a scratch on the head and a well-deserved good boy. Mike Drolet, Global News Toronto.
Such a good boy. And that is Global National for this Monday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada is the village of Brentwood Bay, British Columbia. We'd love to see Your Canada. Please email it to viewers@globalnational.com. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.